Wish you all a pleasant afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'd like to thank the Conservative Institute of the Milan Rastislav Stefanik for inviting me to this forum, which is focusing on a very hot issue indeed, and that is fighting the deficit. That is at the time when just about every EU member state is facing superfluous deficit, trying to decide what measures to take in order to achieve fiscal consolidation while retaining economic growth, which is difficult indeed. Financial and debt crisis has been impacting harshly both families and companies throughout the EU. Unfortunately, the financial sector did play a significant role in the very creation of this crisis. And the European taxpayers who have to carry the burden to bail out the financial system. Member states have already allocated nearly 5,000 billion euros as guarantees to bail out banks and financial institutions, and more than 2,000 billion euros were already provided to financial institutions. Banks have been taking upon themselves too much risk, too high risk, including investment into dubious products, and loaning out too much without making sure that the debtor is capable of paying back. So in this way, they've exposed themselves to too much risk, weakening both the creditors and themselves, the debtors and themselves. I'm glad that the financial sector in Slovakia represents an exception to that. And Slovakia now has a stable and healthy financial sector. Capitalization and profit rates of banks in Slovakia remain high, and that is also due to the reason of conservative banking strategies, through which during the crisis no support or bailout was necessary from public funding or funds. However, at the whole European level, risky behavior of the financial sector had damaged the economy as such. So time is right now for the financial sector to make a contribution, its fair share, and become more actively involved in public finance. It is also time to stop overly risky behavior on the market. I do believe that taxation, together with regulation reform, could be the key response to the crisis. It is necessary to shift towards the taxes, which will not only be as a source of income, but they will have much broader purpose. Taxes which will motivate beneficial behavior for sustainable development. Economic growth. That is why the European Commission in September last year had proposed common rules of taxation of financial transactions, which take place among and between financial institutions in all 27 EU member states. Financial transaction tax can be a source of significant or substantial new income. That's from a sector which can afford to do so. The Commission's proposal would bring annually 57 billion euros, and that is through minute taxation on bonds and shares in the amount of 0.1% and derivatives in 0.01%. All of this is without asking more of regular citizens who, to a great extent, are sort of outside or exempt from this type of tax, and the member states could realize additional income through this tax. They could thus burden their financial background, foundation, and allowing them to go ahead with investment projects. Financial transaction tax could also make a contribution to tax reforms focusing on growth, which now has to be done by national governments. If the financial transaction tax were to be used to decrease other deforming taxes, specifically labor tax, it could make a contribution to strengthening employment and increase the overall demand, which are two key factors of economic growth. Some European states have already introduced some form of financial transaction tax, including the UK. Now it's necessary to act at the whole European level. If individual countries were to define their own way of taxing banks, this would lead to administrative complexity and unequal treatment. Adopting taxes from financial transactions at the EU level would only be a first step. Europe should be leading by example and enforcing global financial transaction tax in discussion with its partners within the G20 group. Responsible financial sector would have a positive impact on economic growth. We all have seen what damage can be inflicted by so-called casino-type banking based on high risk. Financial institutions should refocus their activities, thus contributing to and sharing in rebuilding a healthy economy. Financial transaction tax in this regard shall surely be a motivational factor. This tax is a market tool which, at the expense of high risky speculative operations, supports prudent financial activities. This tax should make better available of loans, increase confidence in large investments, and thus increasing employment as well. Important also is a confidence of consumers. Consumer mood, among other things, is based on trust towards public policy and from the feeling that the right thing is being done. Important for a healthy economy is the fair taxation system. Currently, it is only difficult to argue that tax burden is divided equally. Financial sector taxing at the EU level currently is lower by nearly 20%. By nearly 20 billion euros, while they're still paying huge benefits and huge bonuses to their employees, to the top managers. Unfortunately, banks in many countries are also being supported from the bailout fund, and the cost is borne by the taxpayer. That is why it's no wonder that the position and attitudes of the public is quite negative, in fact, towards the financial sector as a whole. Financial transaction tax would address and resolve this imbalance by providing that the financial sector would contribute from its profits. When that happens, this could strengthen consumer confidence and it could help repairing the bad relation already between citizens and their financial houses. The Commission had proposed fair tax for the financial sector, which could bring much more than merely additional income into state treasuries. And of course, the Commission had also asked the citizens and experts whether to go ahead with introducing such tax. And the vast majority of the people does support financial transaction tax, and the support to the Commission's proposal was also expressed by the European Parliament. So now it's up to the ministers of finance of individual member states to also express this support. And the Commission believes that this tax shall be adopted, maybe not immediately in all states, but in long term it should bring benefit to the entire